Welcome everybody. So today I chose a topic particularly interesting for all of us. Now something that we always wonder usually about is why are the petrol prices always continuously increasing? Now riding a car or basically owning any kind of a two-wheeler or three-wheeler has become some sort of a luxury right now because the petrol prices seem on to go. The state is continuously going to blame the center is continuously going to shift the whole blame to the states, and there is a whole mismanagement going on. Now I'd like to point out something very clear here is that if one realizes that the petrol prices are always different in different states, that means something in Maharashtra is going to be different than something say in another part of the country. So if Maharashtra has got the highest amount of petrol prices that you're going to receive if you are sort of buying petrol from there for your own vehicle, maybe somewhere in say Port Blair or Andaman Nicobar Islands, it's a lot more cheaper. Now this is a very important point to understand. Now every other primary good that you are going to look at it a serious way and say that this is a very important good for the functioning of the economy, most of them come under the VAT system, right? So most of them come under the GST or VAT. Now these are the two sort of tax regimes that we had. Now after the 2017 introduction of GST, somehow the whole emphasis has shifted to the fact that the whole country is going to have a uniformed tax reform. Now before, the states used to charge their own VAT and the center used to charge their own VAT as well, or some kind of an excise duty, right? So because state and the center used to charge their own set of rules or own set of taxation policies, it all used to climb up to a huge amount that you're finally paying. So finally they decided when GST was introduced that it will be on the notation that because 28% is the highest amount of tax you will be paying for any good inside the GST regime. So it was decided so that the taxes could come down and more people can benefit from it, and there can be a uniform tax system and state and the center don't have to fight about their own share in the game. Now most items of your everyday life are included in the GST. Now VAT is something that is still sort of is the main game when it comes to petrol prices. So one very interesting fact about petrol prices is that most of the time the petrol prices that you are paying is all in taxes. That means the fact that say US or say us or say a Sri Lanka or a Nepal, all of us are also buying petrol from the international market at the same rate. But we end up paying a lot more as a consumer primarily because of say the taxes and in particular VAT. So when we break down, it's usually the cost that it's in the international market plus center's tax plus state's VAT plus other kind of say import charges, because most of the time 70% to 75% of our entire whatever we are buying from or whatever petrol or crude oil we are buying is mostly imports, because 75% of our crude oil we are importing rather than making it in our own country because we don't have enough resources in that sort. So this is the whole breakdown. So if you realize the cost might be say only 20% of the game, rest of it all, that means 80% of the entire amount that you're paying for a liter of petrol is in taxes. Now, this is the reason why petrol becomes the most sort of a debatable topic, and you will usually realize that because some part of it or most part of it, now taxation is something that is a government decision, or it is in the control of government. That is why you will see that during the times of elections, taxes are always sort of relieved and you have no taxes during the times of elections. So that's a game that government's playing and the opposition and the ruling party are playing with you, so that during the time of elections you will not be worrying or you will not be raising the question of what about petrol. Now, petrol is also very important because at the end of the day, fuel, you have to remember that, say, a food item is a perishable good or you're just using it for a singular purpose. Now, one realizes that if you want to have, maybe suppose, say, this pen that might have been manufactured in, say, in Delhi, for me to access it in Hyderabad, it has to travel all the way from, say, Delhi to Hyderabad, maybe through water or through air, and then for that also again it's going to consume a certain amount of all the whatever freight charges, which again includes a transportation cost, which transportation cost is nothing much the diesel or the petrol prices you're paying. So all in all, the fact is that for a particular good to reach to you, again the key sort of a resource here, or the very important mechanism, or the very important petrol is the driving force of it all. So that is also a reason why petrol becomes such a inflationary topic, is because all the time, most of the times you're importing, most of the time it's something that is very important, and most of the time it's not available in enough quantity for both state and center to say that, what, we are actually going to be free about it. Because there is a clear monopoly in how the world functions in terms of the availability of oil resources. I think Gulf War is also a big example of how important oil is in the present day world. So one thing we did understand is that by now, through all of this, is how important petrol is in terms of our understanding of how the whole mechanism surrounds around petrol, point number one. And two is what a big role taxes have to play. Now, since these 2 points are covered, I'd like to emphasize on another very, very important concept, is how, in spite of understanding all of these points, why petrol prices are increasing is a question that is still going to be a difficult question to answer. Now, I've just very, very clearly mentioned that petrol prices, most of it is in terms of taxes. So you can very clearly say that, okay, tax is something that is under governmental control. So if I am the government, I am anyway reducing the taxes during the election time so that you also forget that petrol is such a debatable topic, and both of us can focus on other things, that you can happily vote me. So this is also a very crucial time. So you will always realize that during the election time, the petrol prices are going to be in the minimum, and both opposition and the ruling party are usually going to be on the same page when it comes to their arguments around petrol. So clearly it feels like government has it all. But on the other side, something that is very important is that GST is something that is primarily a centralization scheme. It's a central scheme. That means most of the revenue under GST will be a central revenue. Now, whenever you say central revenue, it is going to be something that the union government is going to get. Now, if the union government, right, sitting at Delhi, is receiving all those record highs that you're hearing of, those crores and crores of GST collections, it is a funny fact that although you're making so much money out of GST is a very profitable thing. The government is only receiving so much money from it, so much revenue, yet the compensations that state receives, compensation to states It's very less. Because when you had the VAT GST culture, VAT is the mechanism through which states are also exercising. So here states had an opportunity to take their share of revenue. Now because you're making it a centralization scheme, you're omitting the whole state revenue concept. So you are left with saying that GST is only central scheme. So now that means that the state is losing out on a lot of revenue. So to make up for that, there's something called as GST compensation, which the central government gives to all the states so as to compensate all the losses that they are incurring now, because they are not charging a special tax through which they will gain some additional revenue. Now by doing that, basically the states are saying that, okay, I will let go of a lot of the revenue I'm receiving. It's practically saying that you have a house, but you're not taking rent for it and you're giving it to somebody else so that they are going to take care of the whole building. But you're losing the share of your rent that you should be receiving for your apartment in a building. Because the whole ownership of building, you're giving it to somebody else. So this also is like a package deal. Now, that is also the biggest reason why the states and the center have a conflict here. Because if they are including, say, a petrol in GST items, then the maximum they're going to get is 28%. Now, this 28% is not enough for the tax for the states. That means if petrol went through the routine GST regime that most of the goods today in our country are going, then because compensation to the states is very less, it is going to be disastrous for state revenue. Now today you're already seeing so many states in our country going bankrupt. If this was supposed to happen, more and more states are going to suffer. So that is why state is always pressuring the center, but states also never demand asking central government to put petrol into GST. So petrol is still in VAT series. So you're realizing that we are going to have to pay the central excise duty. We have to pay all the import charges. Then we also have to pay the state's VAT, and along with all of it, sometimes a particular for a particular reason it might increase again. Maybe it's a miscellaneous charges. So all of this again becomes an issue, and that is the reason why you're going to keep paying extra amount for petrol, much more than what it is in the international market. Now this is a monopoly, and this is some sort of a game that petrol is playing with the governments also. That here the governments are also scared. Now remember, taxes might seem like a big sort of an enemy to all the taxpayers because there's so much of your hard-earned money is going out. But the country cannot function without taxes. Now, one can always argue with the fact that no, all of these ministers and people from the government are going to take it and put it in their pocket and not use it for development. But the fact is that if taxes were not taken, that then our country is going to be in a very difficult state, because then you cannot fund anything. It might see a Sri Lanka story, or it might see an even worse story, because we're an even more populated and a larger country. So we might see devastation on a much bigger ground. So for all of these reasons, petrol prices will keep increasing, and no matter how much you try to come to a conclusion, as a consumer, you will have to pay a lot more than you can imagine. And as a sort of a government is also going to play its game, because government also wants to be safe in terms of the amount of taxes it's earning. And the states also want its share of revenue, and petrol is a huge revenue source because everybody buys it, everybody needs it from say everybody who is using transportation needs it. So it's a huge revenue for the states also. So for all of these reasons, the petrol prices will continue to increase, and sometimes although petrol might feel like a luxury good for us, one can only hope and pray that both states and center are coming to a conclusion where they're both sort of reducing the taxes, where they're still both of them in their own comfort zones, and you're also hoping that the whole oil crisis the world is going through gets done. This is a fact. So here I would say better management of resources, that means better management of petrol. Now let's not go into the whole detail of whether oil bonds have made it a complicated crisis, or whether it is the fact that so and so political party or so and so government has chose to increase taxes, because all of that is again deviating from the fact that so much of it is not in the control really. So all you can really expect, or what the government should be doing, is better management of the resources that you have, and making sure that it does not pain the taxpayer and it does not trouble the common people, because these are huge numbers, man. All of the numbers that you are seeing are huge numbers, and it's very, very painful for everybody to pay. So the better management is all that we can ask the government for when it comes to petrol. So this, I think, is a great sort of an explanation for you also to understand why are the petrol prices constantly increasing. Thank you so much.